What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Success After Trauma, where we really take an opportunity to peel the armor off, share some of the traumas we went through. What was the mind shifts? What kept us going? What was the internal dialogue? And then what we're doing now to really scale success to all new levels. We bring in different guests and they share their stories from all different walks of life. And today's a special guest, is a friend of mine, a serial entrepreneur, a business owner, and a veteran, David Owen. David, will you share with us a little bit about yourself and military career? How long were you in, and what'd you do while you were in?
Yeah, so total time I was in from January 2001 and retired January 2021. So I did 20 years total, 16 of that being on active duty. And, I had different jobs, anywhere from military police to I was an instructor for a while. Then I got in weapons of mass destruction for a while with Homeland Security stuff. And then I started a business on the side. And the plan was to stay in the military, of course, finish up my 20, but then the business kind of exploded. And so,
Horrible problem.
Yeah, it definitely did what I was not expecting it to do. So
That's awesome. So tell me, okay, let's break this down a little bit. 16 years active. Did those come on the front side, on the earlier years where they broke up, or how did that work? The active time.
it was pretty much steady the whole time.
Okay, and then the last 4 years, is that when you did? You were active the whole time, or what did you? I'm sorry, maybe
Well, the last 4 years I went to traditional guardsman once a month.
Got it. So tell us a little bit about what was the business that you created, but really, I really like to know, where did you get the idea for the business?
Well, so right now I own a construction company, residential construction, Orca Building Group here in Middle Tennessee. Really, I remember I was sitting at home and I was thinking, well, I'm going to retire from the Army when I'm 38 years old, and I made pretty good money. I had a bunch of, hazard duty pay, a bunch of extra special pays and everything else. Obviously, when you retire, it's like half your base pay. And so I was doing pretty good. And I realized, when I'm gonna be 38 years old, making about 20 grand a year, what am I going to do? And I don't know if it was that day or the next day. I remember I saw something on Facebook about flipping houses, and it kind of caught my attention. So anyways, I buy the program, or I watch the video. It's like an hour long. Then I buy this program, and it gets into really getting into flipping houses, wholesale and stuff like that. So yeah, I knew this lady. We were friends, and we did a deal together. She had several houses, and so we just basically did a deal with her, and we would take the equity in the houses to basically flip them, get them up to where they need to be, and then after we'd sell them, she'd get all of her money that the purchase. I did this with no money, so like the first wanted $50,000 for that first house. And I think it's like 40,000 is what it was going to take to renovate it. And so we sell it for whatever the amount was. She got her 50,000 plus her 40,000. We split the profits. I was like, okay, this is cool.
You're like, this just worked.
Because going back to military, I don't know how long you been in Middle Tennessee?
About 10, I think 10 years, 10, 11 years, about 10 years.
Okay. See, I came back here and when I was 16 years old. And if you're familiar with Middle Tennessee, you got, I live out in Mount Juliet now. To me, you got Mount Juliet, you got Hermitage, and everything else is Nashville. I didn't know there was East Nashville, West Nashville, Germantown. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't know anything about real estate. I didn't know anything about a crash in 2008. I was kind of protected in that military bubble. I had no idea when I got into it that I was getting into it during the hottest market in the country at the time, in 2016, and it just continued to keep growing. So I got really lucky in that aspect. And so we did that first one. Then I think we did a couple more. Then we bought some. And then we ended up buying a piece of land and hired some builders to build us a house. And really, their cost was better than everybody else I talked to. And they came in way under everybody else and on time, on budget, and everything else. And so I remember the dates. That's how silly it is. It was December 13th, 2015. I was sitting in East Nashville in the neighborhood waiting on a realtor to come out there and meet me to show me a house. And at the time, we were still working on that first new construction home that we had. and we had been taking the profits and putting them into the next deal. And I was sitting out there, I don't know, I was on my high horse, I guess. And so I'm starting to look at deals now, and I'm waiting on this realtor, and he was running late. And so while I'm saying,
A realtor was running late? I don't believe that.
yes, well, you know who he is too. See, okay. But while I'm sitting there waiting, I'm like, man, I'm wasting this dude's time. You know, I can't buy this house. We got all of our money tied up. You know,
Mm-hmm.
little did I know you got to look at 1,000 deals to find one. You know,
Mm-hmm.
however, as I'm sitting there thinking about wasting his time, I don't know. It just kind of hit me, because I've been doing this for 2 months. I'm the expert now, right? Everybody wants to know how you're doing this, right? So I had this idea that was kind of where the Orchid Building Group kind of got its conception at, was on that day. And then what we ended up doing was, I go back, I write this. I've never written a business plan in my life, had no clue how to do it. I spent about 3 days writing the plan out. And then I went back to the builders we was finishing up, getting ready to sell. I said, hey guys, we got an idea. Why don't, because the first company, that the flipping houses, it was me and my brother. And I said, why don't we basically merge the two companies together? I'll find the deals, y'all build them, and basically do a partnership, which we ended up combining the two companies into one.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was 10 houses the first year. We did, I think we was within the first year, we was in the 40s.
Wow.
And I think at that time, that's when I decided, 6 months after I actually started this company, was I should probably get out of the military. Now I'm managing people's money all over and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yeah. So what about tell me a little bit on, were you facing struggles in that transition? Obviously there was a period of time before you did the first concept house, before you actually realized there was a thing there. Take me to that time. We're thinking like, hey, I'm about to be 38, super proud of 20 years in the military, and I got 20 grand a year. What was that? What was that like? What was that mindset like? What was that thought? What were some of the thoughts going through your mind at that time?
when I realized that I'm going to retire, and at the time, 7 years from then,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, that I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do when I got out.
Yeah.
And I guess looking at the route that most people take, probably would have been trying to get a job, government job, or on a police department somewhere or something like that.
So what about, that's I like that you bring that up. A lot of I speak to a lot of people and hear a lot of feedback, and I know I've had my experience as well transitioning out of the military. A lot of times we don't realize what we did in the military, how that actually translate in this layout. Yeah, go ahead, give it to us a little bit, David.
Brother, I mean, this is what I preach every day, man. This is something that is big on my heart. I mean, there's a lot to it. Obviously, we know the transition out of the military. There's got to be something better. Okay, I got lucky because my plan wasn't to transition, and it just kind of happened. Right, I could have stayed in. That was the plan. But no, you're right. Most people, while they're in, when they get out, they try to, like, oh yeah, I've got 20 years driving a tank. Well, what's that going to do, right?
Well, David,
Well, huh?
can I dive just for a second? I want to cut you off for just a second, if you allow me. I really want to highlight for anyone that's listening up to this far. First and foremost, I know I'm personal friends with David, so I don't know where we'll get to go to today, but everything hasn't always been great. You've been through some challenging times, but for anyone that would hear the story just in the context of the last 10, 15, 20 minutes, David said, "Well, I got lucky." Well, how many people looked over the course that you took? How many people said, that's never going to work for me? How many people took the course and then didn't take action? How many people, you to say you created your luck. You
Oh, I
did get
believe,
lucky, but you
yeah, yeah.
created your luck. And I just really wanted to highlight that, especially for everyone listening in. We all have the opportunity to create our luck every day. When we see someone get lucky, it's because they've made decisions, and that's a sum total of the decisions that they made, in which we call luck. I cut you off there.
No,
Let me get you
no,
dive back
no,
in.
you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you said that, because yes, it it didn't just fall into my lap. Well, the part that I think I got lucky at, like I said, was happened to be in the right market at the right time. Everything
Yeah.
else was definitely there was. I mean, brother, I'm old school. I print everything out. I got books and books and books and books tabbed out. I've read every book there is. On all the codes and how to get stuff done, and taking so many. I mean, countless hours of personal development and classes on managing money and putting deals. I mean, it didn't just happen by no means. There was a lot of you know stuff that went into it.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of, I mean, and well, what I'll highlight, but you tell me anywhere. But first of all, a lot of sweat equity, and secondly, a lot of risk. However, something I want to highlight for everyone listening, and us military, us veterans, most of us, I think, may have an upper hand out of all the things of all the baggage we bring into the civilian world from the military. Some things we do have the upper hand, which is really in the way I learned it was ORM, Operation Risk Management.
Mhm.
So it's really being willing to accept risk, but not be willing to accept risk, stupid risk. We're calculating risk all the time, but there's risk always involved. That when we're too afraid to take risk, we're going to stay in the same place. So
Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting we just take stupid risk, but calculated risk is part of the parts that went in the background for you as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. A lot of yeah, and that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier in a way about the transitioning piece for most people. They get out and a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times we see people trying to go back to the job that they had. What they don't realize is you spend my eye opener was when now I'm trying to build this business. I have no clue how to build a business. It's never even crossed my mind. I've never taken business classes, never done any of that stuff. Uh, but one day I say, all right, how does the military do it? Because I spent a lot of my time in training and operations. So what I realize is one thing, the military is a big organization. I mean, it's huge, and
Yeah,
it doesn't get that big and that organized on accident.
that's
So
right.
they do, they do have some great systems, right? And so going more into that piece was like I heard you say the other day, what you do in the military does not define who you are. Your job does not define who you are. You could be you could be infantry for 20 years. Well, you're really only out there, rucking and stuff like that, a small percentage of the time, or whatever your job was. The
Mhm.
rest of your 20 years, the other 90%, 95%, you're in classes, your risk management, your leadership, the military really develops you into more than just that ground soldier or that logistics person. They put a lot of money into you to make you a good
Mhm.
and really learning how to operate on a bigger level. But I think a lot of times we keep in our mind what our job is what defined us. And
Mhm.
so when we get out, it's hard that transition. So you take a guy that's been, especially in our time, most of that time was during conflict. You can have some, young 25, 26, 27-year old who's E6, E7 by now. He's stacked. He's got a couple of combat deployments. He got a lot of respect. He's a hero, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Everybody, he gets respect. He's running, he's got his own platoons or whatever. He gets out thinking, everything's going to be great. The problem is the outside doesn't understand what the inside does.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm.
all that when you put on your resume or something like that, hey, I was 20 years, I drove Bradleys or whatever your job was. Well, how's that going to help me as the employer? Well, that's great. That's really cool. But we can go get a beer, but what's that going to do for my company? You
Right.
know,
Right.
and really we're really missing the highlighting the pieces of everything. Really, when you get out, if you spent 10, 15, 20 years in, you should be coming out if you want to at sea level, suite. You should be coming in at the top, not the bottom.
That's right. That's right. And that's a powerful piece. All the things, the thing that we did, we were taught, we were taught, um, we were taught skills to be able to do the thing that we did, but those skills translate into other things. So we look at that, the E6 or that E7, maybe as a platoon or a company, whatever the case may be. And, had a couple combat tours. it comes out and puts on the resume that I know how to do security and security forces and how to kick in a door. Okay, maybe it doesn't have a as wide of a reach. However, what is multi-unit small leadership.
Yeah.
You know how to do things. I mean, you know how to orchestrate units in different areas at different times while you're in an area that you can't even visually see those units. Through communication. Obviously, we're going to be, well, a lot of us are pretty good with communication, at least with a radio, maybe not with all of our words.
Yeah.
But no, that's a great point that there's just a lot of transferability into the different skills. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's say someone for the veterans that are listening to this or active duty military that are about to get out and they're like, hey, I hear you. I'm in that boat. You're inspiring me. What do we share with them? What kind of resources are out there to help them tap into that entrepreneurial mindset if that's a desire to them, or to really repurpose, to re-realize what they've been through and some of the assets they have. Now I know when, like you said, when you got out, you went through. We could say, hey, I got lucky because I had a thing and I kept going with it, but you still had to. You had to, David, even though you had a thing that you decided to stick with and build to as big as it is today. And for those listeners that aren't sure about Orca, it's a big organization. For those along that way, you still had to figure out how to transfer the skills. What
Oh
was
yeah.
that process like for you? What were the realizations? When did you realize that, hey, for example, the military is one big organization, my business is an organization. How did they organize? How can I organize? What really helped provoke these aha moments as you were having your challenges building your business?
Pretty much every time I hit a roadblock in the business, right? Because only thing I knew was military. So I always said, what did we do? Then
Got it.
I'd go back to the manuals and how to, just put it in a different scenario. A widget's a widget, and realizing, all right, I see what they're doing now. This is how this makes practical sense over here on this side, you know.
So talk to me, so what about, tell me a little bit about before you got in the military. What was, what was, what was childhood like for you?
I grew up out in East Tennessee. Um, we had our challenges. We grew up. My dad. I kind of always have followed him. My dad's always been my hero. But my real mother, she left when I was a baby, and all that stuff. But I always looked up to my dad. Everything my dad did, I did. From the time when I was 9 years old, I was working in tobacco fields and working on farms. I cut my finger off when I was 11 out in East Tennessee working on tobacco fields. One thing there's certain things that have always stood out to me. One thing that my dad would always say when we were younger, he drove a truck, was, I don't know why, he may have only said it one time, but to me, he said it 10 million times. Is I work 13 hours a day, 13 hours a day, whatever. I remember the first time I worked 13 hours a day. I did it for a full week. And I remember the guy paid me. He came over, gave me 34. He pulled out his wallet inside the house, goes, here's some ice cream money. It was $34, you know. Um, but it's always, I've always followed my dad's footsteps and everything. He was in the military. I went in the military. He drove a truck. I ended up, when I got out of high school, I went and drove a truck for a little while myself. Um, yeah. Well, I don't know if I hit what you were asking for.
Yeah, yeah, no, 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 no. So how did what'd your dad do in the military?
A mechanic.
Okay. And then how long did your dad serve in the military?
I 6 years, 8 years, something like that.
Okay. And then what did your dad do? Did you do truck driving after the military?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are some of the struggles you faced along the way, whether they be through childhood or maybe earlier years in the military? But what are some of the struggles you faced along the way?
Yeah. Well, growing up, like I said, it wasn't the easiest. Didn't have the best. I didn't have we were definitely struggling. Our parents did live paycheck to paycheck. I really struggled in school. I had a learning disability, um, to the point that I just almost didn't care anymore back when I was in school. Um, so it was always something. But one thing I was always good at was going back to work. I was always had a hard work ethic. And I remember I was working in restaurants at 14 years old.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
So having a learning disability, I believe that there's all unique. Everyone has unique situations, so I can't speak to everyone's situation. It's not a blanket statement, but more than not, it's been my experience. And my son is has a little bit of um, he has exceptional focus is what he has. And so what I want to highlight or ask you about is a lot of times when children get labeled, especially back when I got labeled with, I think my label was ADHD, and they gave me Ritalin out of a Pez dispenser. They did when I was a kid. But a lot of times you get labeled, and what we find out is their strength, what it's been my experience through, that their strength just doesn't match everyone else's strength.
Yeah.
But it's not that they're actually behind in any way. So if we had 10 pennies in 3 columns, you just had more pennies in a different column, or my son has more pennies in a different column. My son is able to focus on things like so much so he can tune out the entire world. And then people say that's an issue because he's not listening. And I said, what do you mean he's not listening? He's focusing more than I've ever seen anyone focused. Like, that's exceptional. What do you think some of the gifts were that you had as a child, or what do you recall?
Well, it's kind of, there's two things to that because my son's the same way. Um, but going back to mine, one thing that I think with my ability to learn, um, one thing that I always did was somebody who was excelling, I always wanted to be like them.
Mm,
And one thing that those people did, no matter what it was I'm not gonna say smarter, but they were more well read. They knew, in the military, they knew the regs, they knew this and that. I go to these schools, and myself as an instructor, also one thing that I struggled with obviously was I could not sit, and I can't do it today. Sit in a class, you talk to me, I learn, and we're good to go. Come take the test tomorrow. I'm sitting there, but I've taught myself to bring it in, go back and reteach myself at a level that I can understand it. Because if I can understand it, anybody can understand it. It made me a good
mm,
instructor, and it helps make me a better teacher as an adult. That's how I got through that. Now, what you said about the labels and stuff like that. Kind of a funny story. My architect, I didn't know this, but he's a buddy of mine, and we was out hunting. We go hunting and stuff like that together. And we was just sitting there talking, and I'm fascinated with space and all this stuff. Anyway, the USS flies over. I said, "Hey man, there's the USS." I point out to it. Most people don't realize they can see that stuff. They don't realize the stuff they can see. They just assume they're airplanes or whatever. And
right.
he's like, "Oh yeah, it flies over about 7 times a day. It travels 244,000, whatever." He just, I was like,
Yeah. I can imagine you're like,
where did
what?
this come from? It's like, dude, I'm a theoretical
He's like,
physicist.
it weighs this much. You're like, geez.
Yeah, he's a theoretical physics. And
That's
I
pretty
was
cool.
like, what? He was like, yeah. He was like, that's what I went to school for. And so now I'm like, finally, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I know a little bit about a lot of things, that most people just are probably think I'm weird for talking about. But now I'm going to dive into this guy's brain. And we just kind of talk about the evolution of people, and where we started and where we become in such a short amount of time over the last 100, a little over 100 years ago. We were still riding horses, shooting people in the streets,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know. And the funny thing was, so what do you think will be? How much do you think will evolve 50, 100 years from now? And he said, and I didn't understand what he was saying at first. He said, I think we're about at the top of where we're going to be. And it's exactly what I said. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when people are different now, if we think they're different, we label them and put them in a box, and we try to make them the same through medication, through different classes, stuff like that. And when it really hit home last year, my middle child, we used to never notice anything. Everything was normal. He's 12 years old now. I think, but him being home more, COVID, not going to school, things started manifesting themselves more. But before the social issues, what I started noticing was his mind's different. Like first time I noticed it was out bowling. He's calculating everybody's scores. My buddies were like, "How's he doing that?" before.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then I start seeing him do stuff in math and everything else. And it was not long after that when he gets back in school from COVID, we start realizing there's definitely some social stuff going on, some anxiety and everything else. Uh, so we get him tested, and at the time it was, Asperger's, I had learned what Asperger's was, and we assumed that's what it was, and kind of we don't know what we're doing, trying to prepare him for it. You know, he's a huge fan of Elon Musk, huge fan, right? Well, the week before his diagnosis was when Elon Musk did Saturday Night Live, and he came out and said I'm the first person to host his show with Asperger's and stuff like that. So it's really cool for him, but they thought that's, then he goes to he goes the following week to the doctor, and without us even being in there, they tell him he's autistic, so
Wow.
label him. And honestly, I think it kind of makes it worse. I think they kind of, now you kind of have a reason sometimes.
Right. 100%. 100%. We label it, we give it an identity, we bring it to life. It exists, and when I say it, I'm speaking directly. My closest experience is my child. So it, and I'm specifically labeling it as an it. It exists, but the catch is like getting to be, I'm blessed with, in the last year and a half, 2 years of my life, went way down that rabbit hole of neuro-linguistic programming, and it's really, really altered my household. We accentuate his gifts and help him build his opportunities. And so what? Life goes on like normal. Like we don't, the fact of the matter is, the way I see it, he has strengths that most of us haven't figured out how to tap into yet. And because he is capable of tapping into them so easily, we label it as weird.
Yeah, it's incredible. Some of the things that so I don't think some of us I can't tap into some of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. I
It's,
remember when my son was only like three, somewhere in this type of, he's 7 right now, so a little bit younger, and he was playing something. No, maybe he's only about 2. He's playing something, and I'm like, Xander, and he just doesn't respond. And I'm
yeah,
like, Xander, and he doesn't respond. And I'm like, that's a little weird. I mean, I remember the phrase. He might have been 2, and I walk up kind of behind him, and I clap, and nothing. Like you think like get started or something. So of course we're like hearing issues. So we go to the hearing doctor. No, his hearing's fine. Like, okay, all right, well, that's just an oddity. And then we notice it more and more, and we start noticing. So, like, when he would bring his toys out, they had to get organized in certain ways, colors and
yes,
shapes,
yes,
and
yes,
it had to get organized before we could start playing. And if that got interrupted, it was so we started realizing some other things. But the fact of the matter is, like, adults don't have the level of discipline that my son has to focus on something. When the rest of the world doesn't exist. It's not an accident. It's focus. It's a strength. It's
yes,
powerful. All we do, I tell my wife, I said, all we do now is just direct his focus. That's all. Wherever his focus goes, grows. We
yeah,
just direct the focus now. But yeah, I love what you said, and I fully agree. When we're labeling things, we need to quantify stuff to study. We need to quantify to study. But when we label things, we bring them to life.
yeah,
And then like you said, as a society, we're putting people's labels as if it's a shortcoming where it just isn't true. Can you finish for me? I want to hear the perspective on how the labels kind of tied into, like, hey, we might be just hitting the ceiling now, with your buddy, it's theoretical physicist.
well, what I'm seeing is that that's when it kind of had the aha moment was after, because when he said that I didn't understand what he was saying. But if you go back and look in time, and everybody that's ever done anything significant, Einstein, all these people, go back and study, you'll realize they were a little different.
Hmm. Hmm.
They didn't really label them back there. We just said they were weird. That they just care about something different. You know, now I feel like we want to make everybody the same. You know, I mean, there's always going to be people that do things, but um, yeah, I feel like to the different things. But like I said, making everybody the same is what we're trying to do now.
Yeah, yeah.
Be who they are.
I heard something. Let me ask you, get your opinion on this. I heard something the other day that had a projection. Now, this is a very bold projection. Okay, even if the projection's a little bit too bold, where would you dial back in or push out to? But they said that it was a projection that. So they said within the what did they give like a 20 or 30 years within the say the last 20 or 30 years, not that long, very very short span, that we have technologically, if I'm saying that word right, grown more than any other, like exponentially, like just astronomically more than any other 30, 40, 50, 100 year span. The amount of growth we had. So because of that, the growth has now become exponential. Like for example, we have AI that is learning. It's just real. And I talked about a second ago NLP or neuro linguistic programming. If you Google NLP, there's also natural language processor programming, which has to do with teaching AI how to interact with us. Because it becomes exponential, I heard a projection that said by 2045, we won't be able to. It did not say that computers were coming to kill us yet, but it said by 2045, we wouldn't be able to troubleshoot problems because the computer would have advanced past what we are capable of understanding. So we would have rendered ourselves, we'll handicap ourselves by 2045, technologically speaking. Not that we would end the world or something of that nature. And I was like, well, that's something to consider. I don't know that I bought into it totally, but I was like, wow, that's something to think about, that eventually that is definitely a possibility of existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
So you got to think, if you're connected to the internet, you're learning everything that comes out as soon as it comes out.
It's crazy, is it not?
Yeah. And
The power.
a lot of people learn something, create or invent or come up with something new every day. It takes a long time for everybody to realize what everybody's done, but if it's the power of your fingertips, yeah, absolutely. I go down these rabbit holes with AI. I go
I
all
love it. I love it.
First theory. I go through these theories, like, I love this stuff, but
Yeah.
some of it's, it's could be scary.
It definitely can be scary. I love esoteric subjects. I love getting deep. I love when we get to connect and we take some deep dives. There's information there. There's data. When you're talking about space, I was like, "Ooh, can we get on space?"
Yeah.
I love talking about space. In the last year and a half of my life, I've had my mind just absolutely blown about what I was taught growing up about space. I can't even. It's crazy to think. Like I went to school and they told me there was 9 planets.
Yeah.
I like that wasn't that long ago. We now know that there's just a couple billion planets, just a few more than what we first realized.
Yeah.
That every single star in the sky potentially has a rock or a planet that orbits it.
Yeah.
Every single star in the sky, maybe not every single one, but if only half of them, it would be
Right.
more. Yeah, yeah. It's just an unfathomable number, and that's crazy to think. And then I just learned. Have you heard of dark matter
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
space?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just learned about dark matter like 2 weeks ago. I was like,
Yeah. I've been
what?
watching some stuff on it lately. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it a little bit. So
It is hard.
yes.
Scientists haven't wrapped their mind around it yet. And for those listening, like dark matter, of course, Google it, right? What we're just talking about, the internet has the information.
Yeah.
Dark matter is like, if you will, I'm paraphrasing and butchering it a little bit. I'll let you go do your own journeys. But dark matter is um, like the anti-universe, if you will. It's like us in reverse. It doesn't exist, but it does. We know it exists because of its gravitational pull. So everything that we don't see in the universe essentially is dark matter. So if we see a star here and a star here, in between is dark matter. So wherever we don't see anything is actually matter. And we only know because of gravity, because we cannot even see it. more dark matter exists than matter.
There's so much we're only at we're talking about when we was in school, they said there's only 9 planets out there. And they also said that we've only been here for 6 or 7,000 years. We've blown that theory out of the water where I think it was in 2012 where they found the mandible in Chile and carbon dated that back to over, I think, 250,000 years. It's like the more we learn, the more we know we don't know.
Right. Right.
And the universe is so vast. I mean, we can only see so much. I mean, the closest star is, what is it, thousands of light years away. That's traveling at the speed of light for 1,000 years or more.
I can't
We
even.
will never know.
We can't even wrap our brains around that. I wish we could. We don't live for 1,000 years, but traveling at light speed for 1,000 years? Come on, that's crazy. And
Yeah,
and
I get wrapped up in this stuff. Thank you, Joe Rogan, for all that. So, all his rabbit holes,
That's funny. I've actually, I've heard of him before, but
Yeah.
I actually haven't listened to his podcast yet. Eventually, I'm sure I'll probably be drawn there based upon what I hear he talks about, but I haven't listened to his podcast yet. Um, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, it's just, yeah. I
Are they
mean,
good?
exactly how I didn't care about any of this stuff, and then after my divorce, I just sit here at night when my kids weren't here with nothing to do. I listen to one of his podcasts where he'll have an astrophysicist on. He's got everybody on there, and you find somebody that's interesting. So I start following this guy and going down all this astrophysics stuff or all this whatever, these lost civilizations, whatever it is. He's got so much interesting stuff, and I consumed that stuff. That was my life, and like I said, I know a little bit about a lot of things. I love technology, but I'm very technologically illiterate. I can barely work a phone, but the thought of it fascinates me.
I love what you said about like the more we learn, the more we realize that we just don't know.
Yeah.
And as for everyone listening, whatever you don't know, whatever you to everyone, if veterans, active duty military, civilians, people dealing with trauma, I don't care what it is. If when you say, but I don't know how to start a business, I don't know how to write a resume, I don't know how to flip a house, whatever you don't know is irrelevant. You're never going to know everything. You don't own enough bandwidth in your conscious awareness, your conscious mind. You don't own enough bandwidth. The more things that you memorize, you're taking up a space and bandwidth. Certain things aren't worth memorizing whatsoever because we can access them. It was kind of like I'll butcher this one. Hopefully, you can help clean it up for me. Henry Ford, like there was like one time they
Yes.
like in how they said, of course, we all know this guy was revolutionary, literally. But it was like I'll butcher it, but they asked him like that, accusing him of not being that smart.
Yeah, he was in court. Yeah.
And it was I heard it said, and share yours that like they asked him whether it be a math problem or whatever it was, and he said, I don't know the answer to that, but I got a button on my desk that gets someone that knows the answer.
Absolutely. He said I can push a button and somebody that will answer that knows that answer. Yes. You don't
Stop
have
trying
to. We don't have
go
to
ahead.
know. We don't have to know everything. We just gotta know somebody that does, or know a resource. And guess what? We have a resource right here.
Powerful
Everything.
resource.
Yes.
And when we start networking, everyone's actually connected. We allow because we are trying to know, we clog our bandwidth.
Yes.
Imagination is much more important than education.
Yeah.
Nothing ever has been taught before it was imagined. Now that it might take a second to wrap our heads around that. Nothing ever was taught before it was imagined. If I taught you how to tie your shoe, I had to imagine how to tie my shoe and create an opportunity of where I showed, here's how I tie a shoe. Now I'll teach you how to do it. Everything that was man-made was conceived first through thought. That was the imagination. We had to imagine, we had to visualize it in our mind first.
Yeah.
Imagination is much more powerful than education. Education is limited. Imagination is unlimited. That which you know, I can find out. I just recommend everyone out there to have a mindset of curiosity. Absolutely anything that you desire, whatever it is that you don't know that's holding you back right now, is just right now. But that was also back then, 2 minutes ago. You have new opportunities to continue to grow, to continue to learn. And just ask people when you're networking. If they don't know, if you call someone and you say, hey, Tom, how do I tie my shoe? And Tom says, I don't know. Say, perfect. I really appreciate you. But who do you know that you can connect me with that might know how to tie their shoe? And he says, okay, you got to call Tina. And you go down that rabbit hole. You're going to find someone to teach you how to tie your shoe. That goes for every single problem you have in your life. Someone has already been through the problem. That's the point of this podcast. Someone's been through the problem that you're facing and they figured out the solution. Don't worry about knowing everything. Go through life with a mindset of curiosity. I got a little excited there, Dave. I felt like I had to share that.
No, man. See, we're on the same page, man. We think a lot. We think the same exact things. I know what you're gonna say before you say it, man. Go back
Love
to
it.
everything that you see around you, everything, unless it's grass or a tree or whatever, terrestrial. It was a thought. Somebody had to think about it. Your clothes, your chairs, everything you see that came with a thought, and somebody had to figure it out. Right now, those thoughts that manifested into what we see now, everybody's got thousands of thoughts, right? So everything you see is probably only like point, I forget, I have no idea what it was, 0.000001% of what could have been. Every other thought, idea, great thing went to the grave of the person because they didn't know what to do with it.
Mm.
But hey, well, hey, how you get it? How you get a patent? How you do this? I don't know. Okay, next. You know, it's yeah. If we would have had just 0.0005%, where would we be at today?
Man, you ain't lying. And think about that. Where would we? Where for everyone listening? Where would you be at? Um, Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but, but I'll come back
Sorry.
to it. Yeah, yeah. When you get down those, when you get deep down in there, but
Yeah.
just really realizing that we are the secret. We're the secret sauce, right? It's all about we every single time I have a belief, and I want to let everyone know, for anyone that anything that I say that you say, nah, that isn't right, just reject it. Just reject it, because that's your power. That's your power. I have the belief that every time that we get stuck in a stuck state, because we're either in a stuck state or we're in movement, right? And when you're in movement, I'm hoping and praying for you that it is always positive and loving movement. When we're in a stuck state, I have a belief that it is always a thought that is keeping us in that stuck state. Now, for some people, I get it. You're allowed to say, hey, I reject that one, and that's fine. That's fine. But if you want to take on that journey, it's a journey where we realize that we're at cause for what happens in our life. It's the same thing that I do with my son. If I say something to my son he doesn't, I don't get the reaction that I'm looking for. I look for a different way to say it. I don't look for a way to discipline him.
Yeah.
Allow and really just getting at cause in our life, and really just taking responsibility for our life, and deciding that we are going to find a way. The richest person in the world, the smartest person in the world, the oldest person in the world, and whoever the youngest person in the world constantly continues to be every second, we all only have 24 hours in the day. There's no inequality of time. And furthermore, I'm going to suggest no one has access to information that you don't have access to. Okay, maybe there's some outliers to that. I don't know. But if you want to hold on to those outliers, you can. If not, just find the information you're looking for. Let's see. So we dove in. What else do we want to talk
Yeah, we've
about?
been all over the place,
I know
man.
we went all over. We talked about military transition. We talked about space, but
Yeah.
really the big thing, for everyone listening, we did go all over the place. We kind of Joe Rogan'd it, right? But but the the common concept here is, again, you and your mind is the
Yeah.
common thread in all of. I mean, we talked about labels. We talked about child how we were labeled with learning disabilities. We talk about our children that have gifts that we have realized. That military transition, and of course that little tiny thing called space. um, let's see. Before we get out of here, we'll get to. I want to see what parting words do you have, David, for anyone that's listening right now? Let's say, and even if they're military, or even if they're not, if they're civilian, whatever age they're at, because at the end of the day, the common thread is, so we know that sometimes transition out of the military can be rough, but what the common thread is they're either in a stuck state or they're not in a stuck state. So to those that are in a stuck state, whatever, remove the context. So where are they stuck at? Let's remove, right? But to those that are in a stuck state, what's your final thoughts to them? How can they shift their focus? What kind of thoughts should they be thinking? What does the internal dialogue sound like to help them get out of that stuck state?
Probably break it down.
Love it.
Break it down a little bit. And then, like you said, just go talk to people that's done it, right? You don't talk to, if you want to get into truck driver, you're not going to talk to cooks, right? You want to talk to people that's done it. I'm very introverted. One thing that I made myself do was go to every event that I could and start, networking. And I was a network. That's when I realized that, like I said, we built this company with no knowledge. Everybody else has
Mhm.
got the knowledge. We're all learning from each other. You know, um, but yeah, there's resources out there, and you don't pin yourself on trying to find somebody to tell you how to do it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
love what you said.
start there.
I love what you said about break it down. I love that was like one of the first things that came out of your mouth, and I was like, "Ooh, that's gold for everyone listening right now." We have being in a stuck state. We're in a stuck state because we have a problem all the time. So if you're listening and you're in a stuck state right now, like this is an actionable item that David's taken given you that you can take away and go put into use now. Now, like you can pause the audio. And what we're talking about is you're in a stuck state because you have a problem. Break that problem down to the most tiniest little piece. How can that problem exist? What is the original piece what's the start of the gestalt or the grouping of things that exist? What is the first piece that if this removed, all the rest of the other pieces to the problem can no longer exist? And all you have to do is really just start breaking down the problem in a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper. How can that be? How can that exist? How can that, if I'm late, how can I be late? Well, I can be late because I didn't allow enough time for me to drive to work. Well, how can I had not allowed enough time to drive to work? Well, I didn't allow enough time to drive to work because I didn't have enough time this morning to get ready. Okay, how can I had not had enough time to get ready this morning? Oh shit, I didn't prep my shit last night. Okay, so if I prepped my stuff last night, could I have been late for work? And if the answer is yes, dive in deeper. And if the answer is no, you found the solution. But I love what you gave him, David, and I really want you guys to take that and really just get out a pen and paper. Get out a pen and paper and just start diving down. How I'm going to suggest there's other ways around it, but just today, just to get you up and running, use the word how. How's more important than why? How is more important than how? How tells us the structure of the problem. Why tells us the reason of the problem. I don't really care why. I don't care why it's happening, actually. How is it happening? If I alter the structure, it can't happen. I don't really care why. So I love that, David. And that's an actionable piece for everyone listening. Break down your problem in that stuck state. If you're in a stuck state, identify what is my problem, what is the thing that I need fixed, what would be different so that I could keep moving forward. And the answer to any one of those three is the problem, and then break it all the way down.
Yes.
Dave, you got any final thoughts for anyone listening, or anything else? We already gave final thoughts, but before we wrap up,
Well, I got 1,000 things. But every time we say something, we got to put in a direction. So I would just tell you, man, dude, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you. And if anybody, look, one thing that I feel like I had a gift being able to do what I did. But I feel like I didn't have somebody to show me, right? What I try to do with people is be the person that I wish I had to other people, right? Whether it's military, whether it's just in business in general. I try to be a mentor to people. If somebody's stuck somewhere, whatever, especially trying to make a transition, reach out to me.
I love it. And what's the best? How should I reach out? Email, Facebook? What's best for you?
Either one.
Okay, cool. And for those of you that have already heard this and said, man, I want to reach out to that guy, it's David Owen. His name's right at the bottom of the screen. If you're listening to the audio, make sure you download and tell your friends, because here's the deal. Every story is touching someone. Every story is changing someone's lives. And the more you help get the word out, the more you share this podcast, the more we as a team, you get to be part of this mission changing people's lives. So if you're listening to the audio, make sure you download it, make sure you tell your friends. But check us out on YouTube, the channel Success After Trauma. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can watch the video format. You'll get the spelling of David's first and last name. Check him out on Facebook. Reach out. The man has been absolutely, I was introduced to David a little while back from a mutual friend, and it's been open arms the entire time. Absolutely anything I need. Incredible guy. I really appreciate getting to have you on, David. And for everyone else listening, if you have a story to share and you're ready to share that story and you're ready to empower other people, reach out. It's greg@gregpihs.com. I want to host your story on here. But what's more is, if you have a story to share and you're not ready to get on this platform and share it, but you wish you could, reach out, because I want to help you personally. You are only as strong as your secrets. Let's bring light to what's in the dark. Be great. It's already in you.